call it Heads. He is insensibly subdued to settle quiet. He is one by whom long patience has such mild composure given, that patience now doth seem a thing of which he hath no need. He is by nature led to peace so perfect, that the young behold with envy what the old man hardly feels. Hello, and welcome to Storytime with Isto. You have reached chapter 11 of Tarot Tales, a weekly gathering where I tell a little-known fairy tale based on a randomly drawn tarot card. Those of you that were with me at the end of season 1, book 1, chapter 10, episode 10, know that I drew the Nine of Wands, which is this beautiful card right here. And I have been stuck with the energy of this card for the last 5 months, waiting to start this new book, book number 2, chapter 11. And it has been as exhausting as this card is, as I have learned that it is over this time. So I actually went to a tarot show while I was waiting for all of this to happen with a friend of mine, and she drew this card in relation to trying to find a new job. And what we learned was that this card is almost a complete set. It's almost getting to number 10. And we've got this person that is so exhausted, leaning up against this stick because they're beleaguered or holding on to it because they may have a battle coming up. They've gotten a head wound here that they're trying to recover from, and they're looking off into the distance with suspicion. And those are all of the same kind of vibes that this card has got for me as well. It's this idea of persistence, exhaustion, holding on, waiting for something. I really resonated with this. And I actually drew this upside down, which I did not remember until I went back and watched that episode earlier today. And if you draw it upside down, reversed, as with all of the other cards, it symbolizes not quite handling the upright meaning in the way that we were thinking. So you might get overwhelmed by your feelings, not be able to set really good boundaries in the way that you were hoping for. It could be like absolute weakness or just complete giving up. Luckily, that's not what happened here, but I am proud to be here for a symbolic 10th wand. I've got a therapist. I've got a coach. I have got a new job, and I'm so excited. I got this new coin that is so neat. It's got this snake on the front with the apple behind it, and then on the head side, we've got Eve just distraught with the apple. And none of you have to think it's cool, but I'm so excited about it. All right, enough ado. Let's talk some beverages. I genuinely thought that maybe I would stop doing these little beverage books because I'm pretty sure most people aren't joining me in a cocktail, or at least the cocktails I'm prescribing. But I decided this was just hitting the spot a little bit too much and that I was going to lean into it. So I drew this character. I loved the idea of the 9 wands being the hands kind of on someone's head. And I accidentally drew this right side up or upside down. So I cut it out and then I sewed it back onto the paper. And I really don't know why I've been so into sewing paper, but that's what I do with all of these books. Don't know why, but that's my special little gift right now. All right. Cocktails. What I have sitting right here is a cocktail called Tomorrow We Sail. And it is a mix of champagne, dark rum, port, triple sec, and a nice little orange peel. It packs quite a punch, as I have been told by my partner. And then for those of you that don't drink, we have a virgin white Russian. It is cold brew, heavy cream, vanilla extract, some ice, and maybe some caramel sauce if you're feeling frisky. If any of you enjoy that, cheers to you. regardless of whether or not you made one of those drinks, if you're watching this in the future, or if you're watching this live, I am just so grateful that you're here. Thank you for joining me for chapter 11, the beginning of book 2. And wherever you are, if you have a cocktail or just a water, to you I say cheers. Mm. You can really taste the port. All right, so theme with this card, this kind of I'm embattled, pursuant nature. I found a story that just stuck with me, as these all tend to do, when I was thinking about the mood of this card. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I actually was reading a bunch of folk tales about Chile while I was going through it, and I found this card, which actually isn't from Chile, but is based nearabouts. And it's fascinating because it is the inspiration for one of the most well-known novels in American history, for sure. And that is Moby Dick. The story that I'm going to tell you is the exact original text that was published in Knickerbocker magazine in 1836. Well, an adapted version of it, from a story called Mocha Dick. So I'll get into all of that. But without further ado, let us start chapter 11, Mocha Dick, or the White Whale of the Pacific. Don't bother my head about catching of seals. To me there's more glory in catching of eels. Give me a tight ship and under snug sail, and I ask for no more alongside the sperm whale. In the Indian Ocean or Pacific Ocean, no matter what ocean, pull ahead, yo heave-ho. When our anchors apeak, sweethearts and wives, you'll a warm drop at parting, breathe a prayer for our lives. With hearts full of promise they kiss off the tear from the eye that grows rarely dim near with fear. Then for the ocean, boys, the billows commotion, boys, that's our devotion, boys. Pull ahead, yo heave-o. There are few objects in themselves more picturesque or beautiful than that of a whale ship. Seen from a distance of 3 to 4 miles on a pleasant evening in the midst of the great Pacific, as she moves gracefully o'er the water, rising and falling on the gentle undulations peculiar to this sea, her sails glowing and quivering in the light of the fires that flash from below, and a thick volume of smoke ascending from the midst and curling away into dark masses upon the wind. It requires little effort of fancy to imagine oneself gazing at a floating volcano. As evening gathered around us, we fell in with a vessel near the Isle of Mocha, which proved to be the same whaleboat a day or two before we had seen in the very act of taking a whale. All right, we're going to pause right now to first orient ourselves, because book 2, baby. We're trying new things. We got a globe. So those of you that joined me for the episode on the Flying Dutchman already know that the spot right under here, which is the Horn of Africa, is called the Cape of Good Hope. I just used the word horn, which is more appropriately used for the base of South America. So we're going to refer to Cape Horn a couple of times in this story, and that's actually where we're rounding about, because a lot of whaling, it turns out, happened in the Pacific Ocean. And the Isle of Mocha is right off the coast of Chile, right about here. Ooh, that's the direction you need to see it. And so if you want to geographically place yourself, just know that this is kind of where we're spending our time. But that's not the only thing I want to talk about, because we're referring to ourselves in the first person throughout this story. And that's because this story was published, as I mentioned, in Knickerbocker magazine by a fascinating man named Jeremiah N. Reynolds. And he's very interesting because he was an explorer with some eccentric beliefs. And as I was digging into them, I found that he was a big fan of a theory called the hollow earth theory, which I'm sure you will all find fascinating because pseudoscience never hurt anyone and it's never had any negative repercussions on anyone's life. Anyway, so the hollow earth theory states that at the north and south poles, there is a chasm and there's water that flows between the two of them. This is from a specific book called Adavatbar. It's fiction, but this map is. The specific theory that Reynolds was toting was this idea of there being concentric circles within the earth. And this is an idea that has fascinated mankind for a really long time, specifically in all kinds of ancient myths, the idea of the underworld across all major religions and across all the world. There are these different ideas of a world that is underground that you can go and get your way to. It also inspired a lot of modern fiction. Journey to the Center of the Earth, a short poem narrative by Edgar Allan Poe, and still pops up occasionally in popular fiction. Widely debunked at this point, but in 1836, it was still debunked, but there was still a lot of murmurs around the idea that it might exist, and Reynolds gave a lot of essays specifically advocating for exploratory voyages to go to the North or South Pole to prove whether or not there was an internal Earth, a separate sphere in the center. And he never did, for the record, but it was on one of those voyages that he made his way around Cape Horn to the Isle of Mocha, where he heard this story that was then published in Knickerbocker magazine that inspired Moby Dick. Blew my mind. All right. He's also about to recount meeting a sailor who then is going to talk about meeting Mocha Dick. So stick with me. You're smart, and we're going to figure it out. We found the whaler a large, well-appointed ship, owned in New York and commanded by such a man as one might expect to find in charge of a vessel of this character. But what shall we say of his first mate, or how to describe him? According to the measurement of his philosophy, whaling was the most dignified and manly of all pursuits. He recounted to us that soon after the commencement of his nautical career, in order to prove that he was not afraid of a whale, which upon a wager he offered, to run his ship alongside an old bull and leap onto the back of the fish, sheet his lance home, and return on board safely. This feat, daring as it may be considered, he undertook and accomplished. At least, so it was chronicled in his log, and he was ready to bear witness on oath to the veracity of the record. But his conquest of the redoubtable Mocha Dick unquestionably formed the climax of his exploits. The renowned monster, who had come off victorious in 100 fights with his pursuers, of prodigious size and strength, who was, from the effect of age, or more probably via a freak of nature, white as wool, instead of projecting his spout obliquely forward and puffing with a short, convulsive effort accompanied by snorting noises, as was usual with his species, he flung water from his nose in a lofty and perpendicular expanded volume. Its expulsion produced a continuous roar like that of vapor struggling from the safety valve of a power steam engine, which we will now have an example of. Thank you to the 15-year-old British women, girls, I should say, who in 2009 posted how to do that on YouTube, which I watched about 20 times. I'll link to you. The safety valve of a powerful steam engine. On the sperm whale, barnacles are rarely discovered, but upon the head of this lusus naturae, which is Latin for freak of nature, they had clustered until it became absolutely rugged with the shells. And now we've got to learn about barnacles. Normally we wouldn't, but turns out the specific kind of barnacles that would be on a Mocha Dick, a Moby Dick, are fascinating. And they are called Acorn Barnacles. I don't know if you could hear that whistle. So barnacles themselves are crustaceans, but they are sessile, which means that they cannot move. So they're larvae that just kind of float through the ocean and then attach themselves to a specific spot. Sometimes you might see them on whales. And then they form this general circle, this kind of crust around them, and then they live on the inside of that. Now, they typically feed on plankton. It's mostly a mutualistic relationship. It's not parasitic, but they are hermaphroditic, which means that they have both male and female reproductive organs. However, they cannot self-fertilize. And this is why this is a vocab word for us this week, because the acorn barnacle has the longest penis in the animal kingdom relative to its size. Can you believe that? How's that for a fun fact? So these guys can actually be around 1.25 centimeters in length, and their penises can be up to 6 times that. So they'll just reach over and impregnate one of these other crustaceans. And another fun fact, their penis dissolves every year and they have to regrow it. So what that means, not a sperm whale, but the animal with the largest penis is the blue whale. And if a blue whale got a crustacean, an acorn barnacle stuck on it, then you would have 2 of the most interesting penises in the animal kingdom just sitting there. How do we not know about this, folks? Come on. All right. Numerous boats are known to have been shattered by his immense flukes. I'm going to use the word flukes a lot. It just refers to a whale's tail. Or ground to pieces in the crush of its powerful jaws. And on one occasion, it is said that he came off victorious from a conflict with the crews of 3 English whalers. A back serried with irons, which I don't know if you can tell, but those are all little wands that I cut from the actual card. Serried with irons, sufficiently attested that though unconquered, he had not proven invulnerable. From the period of Dick's first appearance, his celebrity continued to increase until his name seemed naturally to mingle with the salutations between whalemen across the Pacific. Any news from Mocha Dick? Indeed. Nearly every whaling captain who rounded Cape Horn, if he possessed any professional ambition, would lay his vessel along the coast in the hope of having the opportunity to try the muscle of his doughty champion, who was never known to shun his assailants. In short, regard him as you would, he was a most extraordinary fish. The first mate continued. I will not weary you, he said, with the uninteresting particulars of our voyage to Cape Horn. We were now standing in the coast of Chile. It was a quiet and a beautiful evening, while far to the northeast, looming darkly against a paler heaven, rose the conical peak of the island of Mocha. The lookout at the masthead all at once stopped, fixed his gaze intently for an instant on some object to the leeward, leeward means against the wind, that seemed to attract it, and then hailed, "Oh, there she blows! Sperm whale and a thundering big school of them!" "Oh, stand by to lower!" exclaimed the captain. "All hands, cooks, steward, cooper, every damned one of you, stand by to lower!" An instantaneous rush from all quarters of the vessel answered the peal, and every man made their way to their station before the last word had passed the lips of the skipper. "Lower away!" And in a moment, the keels, which is the bottom of a boat, the keels splashed into the water. "Jump in, my boys, line your oars, now pull as if the devil was in your wake." Okay, so we're going to take another brief break because I actually didn't know before I started researching this episode that this ship, the whaling ship, was not actually the ship that attacked whales. I kind of assumed that whales were as big as this ship and that all of the attacks happened from here, but that's not the case. They had these other teensy tiny little boats here where they would come aboard and then go in to attack the actual bull. So we're going to do a bit of a perspective shift here. I'm going to remove this You're going to imagine these people here, but I am going to go ahead and keep our first mate in the background because I want you to remember that he's the one telling the story, you know? So these should be roughly to scale with the whales that we have coming. Pull now as if the devil was in your wake. Every mother's son of them pulled as if he had been born with an oar in his hand, and at every stroke the tough blades bent like willow wands. Away we dashed in the direction of our prey, who were frolicking on the surface of the waves. Occasionally, a huge shapeless body would flounce out of its element and fall back with a heavy splash. We were within 100 feet of our herd when, as if from a common impulse, they all of a sudden disappeared. Follow me, I shouted, waving my hands to the men in the other boats. I see their track underwater. We'll be among them when they rise. Pull! And they did pull, manfully. And after towing for about a mile, I ordered them to lie. The oars were peaked, and we rose to look out for the first knobblehead that should break water. It was at this time a dead calm. Not a single cloud was passing over the deep blue of the heavens. We remained quiet for about 5 minutes, when some dark object was descried ahead, moving on the surface of the sea. It proved to be a small calf playing in the sunshine. Pull up and strike it, I said to the third mate. It may bring up the old one, perhaps the whole school. And so it did. The sucker was transpierced, and hardly had it made its first agonized plunge when an enormous cow whale rose close beside her wounded offspring. Her first endeavor was to take it under her fin in order to bear it away, and nothing could be more striking than the maternal tenderness she manifested in her exertions to accomplish this object. But the poor thing was dying, and while she tried vainly to induce it to accompany her, it rolled over and floated dead at her side. Perceiving it to be beyond the reach of her caresses, she turned to wreak her vengeance on its slayers and made directly for the boat. Ordering his boat steerers aft, the first mate sprung forward, cut loose the line of the calf, and then snatched the remaining iron, which he plunged with his gathered strength into the body of the mother as the boat sheered off to avoid her onset. I saw that the work was well done, but had no time to mark the issue, for at that instant a whale breached at a distance about a mile from us. The glimpse I caught of the animal in his descent convinced me that I beheld at once Mocha Dick, for that falling mass was as white as snowdrift. No sooner was his vast square head lifted from the sea than he charged down upon us, scattering the billows of spray as he advanced, leaving a wake of foam from the violent flashing of his flukes. He's making for the bloody water, cried one of the men as he cleft his way towards the very spot where the calf had been killed. Here, harpooner, here, steer the boat and let me dart, I exclaimed as I leaped from the bows. Pull for the red water! And as I spoke, the fury of the animal seemed suddenly to die away. He paused and lay passive in the red waves, with his arching back thrown up like the ridge of a mountain. The old sog's lying too, I cried exultingly. Spring, boy, spring now, we have him! And as the words were uttered, I raised the harpoon above my head, took rapid but no less certain aim, and sent it, hissing, deep into his thick white side. Stern all for your lives, I shouted, for at this instant the steel quivered in his body, and the wounded Leviathan plunged his head beneath the surface, and whirling around with great velocity, smote the sea violently with fin and fluke in a convulsion of rage and pain. Our little boat flew dancing from the seething vortex around him, just in season to escape being overcome or crushed. He now started for a run. For a short time, the line rasped, smoking, and a few turns round the loggerhead secured it, and we went leaping onward in wake of the tethered monster. By this time, the whole school of whales was around us, and spouts from 100 blowholes, with a roar that almost deafened us, were raining on every side. Are you happy? While in the midst of a vast surface of chafing sea might be seen the black shapes of the rampant herd, tossing and plunging like the legion of maddened demons. At length, Dick began to lessen his impetuous speed. "Now, my boys," cried I, "haul me on, haul me away, shipmates." The boat brought firmly upon his broadside as I spoke, and I gave him the lance just under the shoulder blade. At this moment, just as I was straightening for a second lunge, a piercing cry from the boat steerer drew my attention quickly aft, and I saw the first mate's boat, or more properly, a fragment of it, falling through the air, and underneath the dusky forms of the struggling crew, grasping at the oars or clinging to portions of the wreck, while a pair of flukes descended in the midst of the confusion. The boat had been struck and shattered by a whale. "Rah! Good heaven!" I exclaimed. Suddenly, as though girded by the exertion into some fiercer pang, Mocha Dick started from his lethargy with augmented power. Making a leap toward the boat, he darted perpendicularly downward. 200 fathoms of line were carried spinning through the chocks with an impetus that gained back in steam the water that was cast upon it. Still, the gigantic creature bored his way downward with undiminished speed. Coil after coil went over and was swallowed up. "Cut!" I shouted. "Cut quick, or he'll take us down with him!" But as I spoke, the boat rose on end, and her bows were buried in an instant. A shriek rose. When, unexpected mercy, the whizzing cord lost its tension, and our light bark, half filled with water, fell heavily back on her keel. A tear was in every eye, and every heart bounded with gratitude at this unlooked-for deliverance. Overpowered by his wounds, and exhausted by his exertions and the enormous pressure of the water above him, the immense creature was compelled to turn once more upward for a fresh supply of air. And upward he came, indeed, shooting 20 feet of his gigantic length above the waves. He was not disposed to be idle. Hardly had he succeeded in bailing out of our swamping boat when our game then abruptly brought to and lay as if paralyzed, his massy frame quivering and twitching. I gave the word to haul on, and seizing a boat spade as we came near him, drove it twice into his small. "Lay around, my boys, and let us set on him," I cried, for I saw his spirit was broken at last. The work was done. The dying animal was struggling in a whirlpool of bloody foam, and the ocean far around was tinted with crimson. "Stern all!" I shouted, as he commenced running impetuously in a circle, beating the water alternately with his head and flukes, smiting his teeth ferociously in their sockets with a crashing sound and strong spasms of dissolution. As I gave the command, a stream of black, clotted gore rose in a thick spout above the expiring brute, and fell in a shower around, drenching us with a spray of blood. Don't know if you can see that, but it's port, and it hurts. Oh, God. Drench us in a spray of blood. Then he turned slowly and heavily on his side and lay a dead mass upon the sea, through which he had so long ranged a conqueror. "He's fed up at last!" I screamed at the top of my voice. We now drew alongside our floating spoil, and I leapt upon Dick's back, planted my waif pole in the midst, and saw the little canvas flag that tells so important and satisfactory a tale to the whaleman, fluttering above my hard-earned prize. I imagine your context clues will give you all that you need to know about this, but a waif pole is, this is also covered with water and port, is a big flag that they would stick in the blowhole of the whale and sometimes hang a lantern from so that other whalers and maybe themselves could find the carcass after the fact. And sticking it in the whale in the blowhole just feels a little insensitive and also insecure to me. But insecure on multiple levels. Anyway, Mocha Dick was the longest whale I ever looked upon. He measured more than 70 feet from his noddle to the tips of his flukes and yielded 100 barrels of clear oil with a proportionate matter of head matter. All right. Our final vocab word for today refers to this phrase head matter, that Moby Dick, Mocha, yielded a proportionate quantity of head matter. So let's talk about what that means. That refers specifically to this idea of spermaceti. That's what this word is, not spermaceti, which is what I was saying for a while before I looked it up. And spermaceti is this big organ right here. And this was one of the more valuable parts of an actual whale. And it was used for candles. And it was particularly valuable because it wasn't necessarily as smoky. Now, that's the only thing that's referenced here other than the blubber, which is then used in like varnish, soaps, paints. But there were other things that whales were used for in popular trade that I kind of wanted to cover. So down here, we've got, I'm drawing as ambergris, which is the kind of like fatty substance that grew in the intestines that you may know as being used for perfumes. And then over here, we have something called baleen, which is whalebone. And that's actually the filter that they had in their mouths to kind of filter out the plankton. And it was super popular. It was referred to, it is now modernly referred to as like the first plastic because it was durable, but also very flexible and used in things like springs for typewriters, which I found really fascinating. So we have all of these different parts. Oh, and then right here we have the junk, which also had spermaceti in it, but was too hard to get. So they called it the junk because they would throw it away. But it was actually used for echolocation for these whales. So I don't know if at this point, at any point in this story, you're feeling, oh man, I feel sad for this whale. I feel sad about the whaling industry. At one point or another, I have felt that way as I was researching this story. But I imagine some of you maybe feel a little sad or depressed about the state of our global climate crisis. So I thought it might be fun to ask you a little question. Prepare yourselves in the chat or throw it in a comment. Maybe pause the video after I ask the question if you're watching this after the fact, which is, in what year do you think that whaling was outlawed? What year do you think whaling was outlawed? This story was published in 1832. Moby Dick was published in 1851. Give me a guess. What year do you think? Bum, 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 bum. A moratorium on whaling was listed in 1982. Boom, boom, boom. Wah, wah. It just takes time, folks. Fun facts. It may be emphatically said that the scars of his old wounds were near his new, for no less than 20 harpoons did we draw from his back, the rusted mementos of a desperate recounter. The first mate fell silent. His yarn was reeled off. His story was told, and with far better tact than is exhibited by many modern orator, for he had the modesty and discretion to stop with its termination. In response, the vanquisher of Mocha Dick was unanimously called upon for a song. He took a long pull and then, in a deep and sonorous tone, gave us the following ballad. Our boat's in the water, each man at his oar, been strong to the sea, with his bark bound before, as fish of all sizes still flouncing and blowing, with fluke and broad fin scoring the best of hard rowing. Hang to the oar, boys, another stroke more, boys. Now line the oar, boys, pull ahead, yo, heave-ho. Then rises Long Tom, who never knew fear, cries the captain, now hail her, my bold harpooneer. He speeds home his lance, then exclaims, I am fast, while blood in a torrent leaps high as the mast. Starn, starn, hurry, hurry, boys, she's gone in a flurry, boys, soon she'll be in Gurry, boys. Pull ahead, yo, heave-ho. Then give me a whaleman where'er he may be, who fears not a fish that can swim the salt sea. Then give me a tight ship and under snug sail, and last lay me side of the noble sperm whale. In the Indian Ocean or Pacific Ocean, no matter what ocean, pull ahead, oh, heave-ho. Oh, the end. One of my many gratitudes goes to Jared Sutton on TikTok at Jared A. Sutton, Sutton, for creating the melody that I was singing. I looked it up. We tried to find it online. Could not find a single tune for that. So there you go, world. A brand new sea shanty. Copyright Jared Sutton, Isto Barton, Storytime with Isto. Please bring me 100 followers and you can use it wherever you want. Oh, which reminds me, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, like this video. I'm just trying to figure out how to make YouTube work in a TikTok world with this thing that I've decided I've fallen in love with. I hope you enjoyed that story. The biggest reason that I like thinking about this in relation to the Nine of Wands is because I feel like I go back and forth between whether or not the Ahab character or the whale character is the Nine of Wands. If they're the person that's like trying to capture that last wand by killing the whale, or if they're trying to survive yet another attack by mankind. I think it could go either way, but that's what really attracted me to the story, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I hope you learned something new. My gratitudes are endless right now. I am so thankful for so many people. In particular, so many people reached out to me in the interim over the last 5 months and encouraged me during my time trying to figure out what I was going to do with this show. So thanks to all of you. But fitting to the theme this time, I want to give a special shout out to my Nine of Wands buddy. Congratulations on your 10th wand. Thanks for sticking it out with me. Thank you to everyone that helped me find a new job. Shout out John, shout out Allegra, Jess, Nick, shout out Michael for all of his unending support, not unendearing. Shout out to Janice, Elise. Thank you all for all of your support as I've continued to move forward. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some other names. I started kind of riffing there. Next week, the card that we will be dealing with is the Queen of Cups, this lovely little monarch that is sitting on the side of the ocean. And we will be going to Ecuador for the next story. I won't spoil anything else, but if you would like to drink the cocktail I drink during this show, I will release that tomorrow morning on Instagram, and then I'll put it on the website as well. So if you'd like to drink along or expand your liquor cabinet, please keep a lookout there. All right. With that, I think we're ready to close. And so, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you treat yourself with love and respect. May you continue to grow and find the strength to persevere through the painful parts of growth. May you find inspiration all around you. And may you find peace. Thank you for joining me this week. Until next week, bye, y'all.